For the museum I volunteer at, a musical instrument museum, we have all sorts of markings and labels and various schemes that we use on artifacts, on shelving, etc. And one of the things that we use a lot of is this U-line product. This is the loop, or no, this is the hook, I guess. Yeah, this is the hook. So we put these on labels. They're adhesive backed, very aggressive, strong, long-lasting adhesive, doesn't dry out. And then we use the corresponding loop that mates with that, and that's stuck on the front edge of shelving. We end up with labels like this, for example, which has a collection identification number, a code that means something to the museum, picture, and then a sort of a nickname. So we make a lot of these things, and they're just stuck on. Here's another one with the Velcro on it already. Problem is, when cutting this stuff, that aggressive adhesive comes off on the scissors or knife or whatever, to the point where you can't move the scissors or knife through the material you're cutting. It just all sticks together, and it's really a pain to clean up. It doesn't come off with some of the weaker label removers and WD-40 and so on. Works on it a little bit, but it doesn't work on it very well. I have found a tech spray product that it's the stuff I usually use in my own shop for removing adhesives, and it works on this pretty well, although you still have to scrub it a bit with a rag, to get it all off. It would benefit from soaking in the stuff, and the problem is that the tech spray stuff is in an aerosol can, so it sprays everywhere where you don't need it, and you only get a little bit on the thing you're trying to clean, and then it just runs off. It would be better to immerse these in a little basin and let it dissolve, and then just wipe it off. So I've got two scissors here that have a similar amount of glop on them, and I was thinking I was going to try to make my own homebrew kind, which can be just poured out of a jar into a beaker or something, and then immerse these in it instead of using the commercial spray product. The tech spray product I've been using only really has 3 ingredients according to the label, at least active ingredients, and one of those 3 is just the propellant that drives it out of the aerosol can. The other 2 ingredients are listed as hydro-treated heavy naphtha, aka the I guess it's an industrial code for chemicals. It's 64742-48-9, and d-Limonene or limonene, which has got the code 5989-27-5. And I did some research online. I'm not a chemist, although I did study some in college, but that's behind me and I can hardly use it in any meaningful way anymore. Plus, most of these retail versions of products don't usually tell you what's in them. They do not tell you the chemical formulations. Sometimes you can get it from the material safety data sheet. Sometimes you can't. Or they use weird marketing names for them instead of the common names. They are deliberately trying to make it hard to figure out, I think. But according to what I learned online, the hydro-treated heavy naphtha is a type 3 or heavy petroleum distillate, and heavy here means it has a higher boiling point in the distillation process. I think it's more common to have the light versions of naphtha, which has a lower boiling point. But this particular heavy version is also called isoparaffin, mostly in the UK, and it's very similar chemically, but not the same as regular kerosene. It's the primary ingredient in retail mineral spirits and paint thinners, and is more likely to be used even more in the odorless or low odor varieties of those products. The d-Limonene is an organic solvent either derived from citrus fruit peels or more likely synthetically produced. It is often used as a general purpose safe solvent, degreaser, and also as a food additive. And just because I'm pointing at simple green here does not mean that this is a food additive. Not at all. But the d-Limonene is a primary ingredient in many of the quote-unquote green degreaser products. It is also known as dipentene, orange oil, and citrus terpenes. Terpenes? That sounds more likely. Terpenes? Citrus terpenes. Which sounds like turpentine. I don't know if there's a relationship. I haven't looked that up. Anyway, the Tech Spray product doesn't tell me what the proportions are with the two, but I did learn that it's very common to mix the hydro-treated heavy naphtha and the d-Limonene in all sorts of commercially available degreasing / solvent products, and that they are chemically stable together, should not react, although they're both flammable. I think this is more, again, I'm pointing at simple green just to illustrate something that may have d-Limonene in it, not for the actual simple green. And this clean strip product here, I did look it up on their webpage, and it's like 6472-48-8 instead of -9, which is what I'm really after. But it is a mineral spirit, and it's odorless, and I'm thinking it's probably extremely similar to what I'm ideally looking for if I'm trying to match the commercial product. So I was thinking I would do a really careful mixing of these two. I could not find out on Simple Green's website what their active ingredient was. It seemed buried in terminology I couldn't find referenced anywhere else. So I'm presuming they're using their own, marketing name for the strong ingredients. But I would like to see if those two together work adequately for the task. Alright, I've poured them together. They've definitely formed a stratus here, a separation. They're not mixing together very well. I'm honestly not sure which one's on the top. The denser green is on the bottom, so I'm guessing that's the simple green, and this is the naphtha. So I suspect that in the commercial product, assuming these are the actual ingredients and that I have it approximately right, they may have added extra inactive ingredients which just serve to, I want to say emulsify, but I don't think that's quite the right word, but it certainly allow them to remain blended together without separating like this. So they don't seem to be reacting at all this way. So I was going to agitate it next and see if I could get them to stay in solution for any length of time. So here it's been mixed, and it takes on a real foggy characteristic, and it seems like there's already some separation going on down at the bottom, and I suspect it'll only get more separated as I wait here. It's going to be coming out of solution. It's definitely doing that. So I'm not sure how well that will work to be effective in what I'm doing here, but I think I'm gonna stir it one more time and then immediately immerse a couple of these scissors. There's not really that much adhesive on the tips of them. I really should have twice as much in there. So I don't think that's going to help me too much. It's definitely separating out. But maybe I can get some of this on there and then wipe it with a rag and see if it comes off, if it takes the adhesive off pretty well. Well, it took it off pretty quickly, just a slight amount of agitation with a rag. But it definitely was effective at cutting through it and making it easily removable. Now, that's with the combination, and it does seem to be remaining in solution a little better. It is coming out of it, but a little more agitation made it stay in solution for longer. So, I'm going to try both of those ingredients by themselves on the two halves of the remaining scissors and see how they work independently. Well, the simple green wasn't really dissolving that adhesive. The outlying areas where it was a bit thinner, it came off with some rubbing, but it wasn't really very effective. So I'm going to go over to this side and try it with just the naphtha. Alright, just the naphtha by itself went through that pretty quickly. It is obviously the much more effective of the two. I still have some residue on here that I haven't wiped off yet. It's a little bit wet. But definitely it worked as well as the combination of them as far as I could tell in one experiment. And probably the results won't be noticeably better if I do get the exact variety of this that I was after. But I am going to try a couple of other things and see how they work in comparison. But this was the main part, just to see if the ingredients in the tech spray product, the active ingredients, how well they worked if I just made them myself or approximated making them myself. Alright, I also tried, after I got the scissors messed up again with adhesive, I tried the VM&P naphtha, which I'm not really sure what that means. They don't say what the VM&P stands for. But I know that it's used a lot for mixing with certain kinds of paint or varnish before you spray them on something. And I've used just so-called mineral spirits with no qualifier and no chemical information. And they both worked pretty well on the adhesive on the scissors. I also tried WD-40, which did not work on this particular adhesive. It smeared it around a little bit, didn't seem to really dissolve it. So the oil that's in this, WD-40 isn't really a solvent to the best of my knowledge. It's primarily, you know, an oil, a fine oil, and it did not really cut the adhesive in any meaningful way. So I've taken my jar of mixed cleaners that I talked about earlier, and I'm going to try the immersion method. Get it stirred up a little bit here so it's not settled out at the bottom so much. I was just curious if sticking them in here like that for a little while and then just wiping them off would do anything, if that might be the easiest way to work. This was my goal, after all, to be able to do this. Alright, let's see how this worked out. Alright, that worked out pretty well, just as it did in the first test. A little elbow grease was required with the rag, just a little bit. Most of it just wiped off after soaking for a minute, and there were just a couple little tough spots where the adhesive was a bit thicker that I had to wipe back and forth, you know, 5 or 6 times, and then it was gone. So that's definitely a workable concoction. I think it is working about as well as the commercial tech spray product, except that, again, I'm not spraying it all over the place just to get a little bit on here, or trying to saturate a rag with the spray, and there's really not that much in the cans, so you feel like you're wasting a lot. So this is definitely an effective concoction for doing this, and I think it's basically a success, although again, I could have gotten similar results just from using the other naphtha and mineral spirits as well. I'm not sure that adding the simple green to this really does that much, if anything. It's the least effective of the two ingredients for this particular adhesive, I believe. So just tacking on a coat here, in the course of making this short video, I was trying to remember the proper wording for the way these liquids are separating, presumably according to density. And I was not coming up with a word, and the word was immiscible and miscible, where if you have a couple liquids and they're miscible, then you can mix them together and they will stay mixed as a sort of homogeneous solution, or, you know, a liquid of its own without ever separating again. You could leave them for 100 years and they would not separate back out. An immiscible liquid, or immiscible liquids, when combined, you can attempt to mix them and they may seem to mix, but they're going to separate back out according to density, just like this is doing. Now you can see that this is pretty much just the simple green here, and the bulk of this is going to be the naphtha, but this is the part that hasn't separated out yet. It's kind of a foam, so there's some surface tension and other things going on there, but if I give this more time, it'll settle out into the two different layers, very clearly defined like this. If I let this go another day or so, probably it would not look like foam anymore. But anyway, those were the terms I was looking for: miscible and immiscible. And presumably companies like Tech Spray and their product, or, you know, competing products, if they are using these same ingredients, then they're going to be immiscible as well, and they're going to have to use some manufacturing technique or an additive or something to help keep them combined so they don't settle out. And that may be the case. They wouldn't include that extra ingredient or ingredients as active ingredients in their list. But they may also be using different forms of these chemicals, and maybe those are more miscible.